Imagine for a moment that you've done everything right. You've spent the better part of 2 decades building equity, navigating the volatility of the 2008 crash, and surviving the post-pandemic rate hikes. You've found the perfect exit, a multi-million-dollar property sale that represents your transition into a more liquid retirement. The contracts are signed. The boxes are packed. The movers are scheduled. Then, on the morning of the closing, you receive a short, cryptic email from your escrow officer. The system is down. Not just their email, but the entire infrastructure required to verify the wire transfer and record the deed. You check the news expecting a market crash, but the Dow is up. You look for a local disaster, but the sun is shining. The value of your home hasn't moved a cent, yet your $2 million in equity is suddenly as inaccessible as if it were locked in a safe at the bottom of the Atlantic. This is the new reality of real estate, the frozen closing. It is a scenario where your wealth remains intact on paper, but becomes functionally non-existent due to a server error message. We have entered an era where the liquidity of your most significant asset is no longer determined by the market, but by the uptime of a handful of centralized tech vendors. I am the horizon, and today, we look beyond the headlines to analyze why the plumbing of our property markets has become our greatest systemic risk. To understand why this Bloomberg report matters, we have to understand the gravity of the FBI's involvement. In the world of real estate finance, a vendor breach usually implies a delay in emails or a temporary outage of a portal. However, when federal investigators and the nation's largest banks are conducting joint assessments, it signals a threat to the chain of title. We are no longer talking about privacy, we are talking about integrity risk. If the digital ledger that records who owes what and who owns what can be manipulated or frozen, the very concept of property equity begins to liquefy. For those of us over 40, we remember a time when these systems were redundant and slow. Slow was safe. Today, speed is the priority, but that speed has come at the cost of extreme vulnerability. The midnight glitch isn't just a technical failure. It is a warning shot. It tells us that the third-party tech stack sitting between you and your home's equity is a single point of failure that we have ignored for far too long. This is the new frontier of risk management for the modern provider, ensuring that your legacy isn't erased by a line of malicious code in a vendor's database. The shift began in earnest after the 2008 financial crisis. As the dust settled, the global financial order realized that human judgment, while capable of nuance, was also capable of massive systemic error. The response was the Great Abstraction. Trust was moved from the branch office to the server farm. Banks began to de-risk by removing the human element from the equation entirely. They replaced the local manager's intuition with big data and standardized scoring models. This transition transformed you from a person into a data twin. Every transaction, every late payment, and every digital footprint became a data point in a centralized repository. But there was a side effect that few discussed. In the pursuit of efficiency and objective risk, the qualitative value of a man's word was stripped away. The nuances of legacy wealth, the private equity holdings that aren't easily liquidated, the handshake agreements that form the backbone of your business, became dark matter. To a modern bank, if a value isn't captured in a standardized API feed, it effectively doesn't exist. This brings us to the foundations of the black box. Modern scoring algorithms are built on machine learning models that prioritize high-frequency data over long-term stability. They are looking for velocity. How often do you transact? How predictable is your monthly cash flow? How well do you fit into a predefined cluster of similar borrowers? The problem for many high-net-worth men over 40 is that their financial lives are often low-frequency. You might not have a massive monthly salary deposit because your wealth is tied up in long-term investments, trusts, or private companies. You might not use a dozen credit cards to generate a high-usage score. To an algorithm, this silence is indistinguishable from risk. Integrity, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, is not a parsable variable. The machine cannot measure the fact that you've never defaulted in 30 years if that history isn't formatted in a way its neural network can ingest. You are being judged by a gatekeeper that is literally incapable of seeing the very thing, your reputation, that you spent your entire life building. The danger here is a new kind of invisibility. For the demographic that has traditionally held the most power, experienced men with significant legacy assets, there is a growing disconnect between their real-world value and their digital legibility. We are seeing cases where individuals with 8-figure net worths are being flagged as high risk because they lack the digital fingerprints the algorithms crave. This isn't just a minor inconvenience at the bank. It's a fundamental shift in how power and access are distributed in the 21st century. If you are invisible to the code, you are effectively excluded from the new financial order. In the sections to follow, we will analyze why your undigitized life is your greatest vulnerability, and more importantly, how you can begin to bridge this gap. We need to learn how to translate character into data without losing our souls to the machine. The fundamental tension we face today is not a lack of value, but a lack of visibility. For many of you, your greatest assets are those that have never been touched by an API. They are the private equity stakes secured by a decade of quiet performance, the legacy land holdings passed down through family trusts, and the personal networks that function as your informal insurance policy. In the analog era, this was your analog moat, a protective layer of privacy and exclusivity. However, in the current landscape, this moat has become a blind spot. Men over 40 are uniquely at risk because we have spent our careers building reputation capital in the real world, while the financial system has migrated to a digital-first architecture. When an AI-driven credit model or a global wealth management algorithm scans your profile, it isn't looking for the strength of your character. It is looking for the frequency of your data points. If your holdings are structured in private vehicles that don't report to central clearinghouses, or if your wealth is tied up in unconventional assets that the software hasn't been programmed to value, you are, for all intents and purposes, a ghost. This is the invisibility crisis. It is the sobering reality that a lifetime of integrity can be discarded by a system that prioritizes digital legibility over historical reliability. We are seeing a shift where the undigitized life is no longer seen as a mark of prestige, but as a red flag of systemic risk. To understand why this is happening, we must look at the concept of the digital twin. Every modern financial institution now maintains a digital shadow of its clients. This shadow is a composite of your spending habits, your digital footprint, and your interaction frequency with the grid. The problem arises when the twin doesn't match the man. For the generation that values discretion, the digital twin is often malnourished. You might avoid social media, use private banking channels that emphasize person-to-person service, or manage assets through complex, non-standardized legal structures. To a human banker, this is sophistication. To a black box algorithm, this is noise. Algorithms are trained on massive datasets of high-frequency behavior. They find comfort in the predictable and the high volume. When they encounter the low-frequency, high-value life of a legacy investor, they often default to a high-risk profile. This is algorithmic bias against legacy wealth. Because the machine cannot parse the nuance of your handshake or the context of your career, it interprets your silence as a lack of liquidity or, worse, a lack of legitimacy. We are entering an era where your financial digital twin has more agency over your creditworthiness than you do. If the twin is fragile or incomplete, your real-world options begin to constrict, regardless of the actual strength of your balance sheet. So how do we respond? The goal is not to abandon our values or to become digital extroverts. Rather, we must focus on engineering legibility. This is the strategic process of translating your reputation capital into a format that the new digital gatekeepers can ingest and validate. It requires a sober assessment of your data hygiene. First, we must begin to standardize our asset reporting. This means moving away from opaque, idiosyncratic accounting and toward frameworks that align with modern fintech protocols. It may feel like a concession to the machine, but in reality, it is an act of preservation. Second, we must bridge the gap between our private networks and digital proof. This involves utilizing blockchain-based verification for private contracts or ensuring that legacy holdings are registered in ways that are accessible to automated verification systems. We are not looking for quick gains here. We are looking for long-term sustainability. By making our assets legible, we remove the friction that currently exists between us and the global credit markets. We aren't changing who we are simply ensuring that the language we speak, the language of reliability and character, is translated into the code that now governs the world's wealth. It is about maintaining the soul of relationship banking while adopting the skeleton of digital finance. As we look toward the future, it is clear that the social contract of finance has been rewritten. The era where a man's word was his bond hasn't ended. It has simply evolved. Today, your word must be backed by data that can be audited by an intelligence that doesn't sleep and doesn't know your name. This is not a cause for despair, but for a renewed sense of stewardship. We must be as diligent with our digital presence as we have been with our physical reputations. The trust deficit is real, but it is not insurmountable. By understanding the mechanics of the black box, we can ensure that our legacy remains visible, viable, and valued. At the horizon, we believe that the integration of human-centric values with digital-first tools is the only path to lasting wealth. Stay analytical, stay calm, and most importantly, stay legible. I'm the horizon, and I'll see you at the next inflection point.